How are we doing? So I want to preface with, I'm not in HR, so I'm not going to be talking about compliance, payroll, PTO, or any of that. But what I want to talk about is something a little deeper, and that's how we treat people when life gets real. Right? I Made the Arrangements is a website that I spent 1.5 years building, and it really kind of encompasses end-of-life planning. What started out as just a simple questionnaire as far as logistics for a funeral, right? Do you want to be buried? Do you want to be cremated? If you'd like to be cremated, what would you want done with your ashes? Is there anybody in particular you'd like to speak at your ceremony? What would you like them to say? Identify pallbearers, things like this. I've often thought about my end of life and what I want to do to support my family in the grieving process, right? And the sites start to take on a life of its own. And I'll get into some of the site features shortly. But what I'd like to ask, without kind of looking at each other, just a show of hands, how many people in the room have put together a will? Okay, a little above the norm. Now, how many of you have a detailed funeral plan? That's more like it. So as of 2025, 24% of Americans have a will. Right? Although 67% of Americans acknowledge that this is a very important document. Right? And you wonder why that is. Right? Now, I've got my own thoughts, right? Death, dying, taboo, right? Don't talk about it, don't think about it. Stick your head in the sand, right? Put a little lamb's blood over your doorpost, maybe it'll pass over you, right? This is life's most certainty, right? We're all going to die, right? Our society has told us this is a very dark topic, right? When you think about an image of death, right? In polling people, 70% of people will tell me that it's the Grim Reaper, right? It's this dark, hooded caricature that's coming after you with a sickle, right? Funeral attire, black, right? But if you've ever had a conversation with somebody that's been revived, somebody who's died and come back, there's this commonality, right? They talk about this bright light, right? I think about Patrick Swayze in Ghost, right? You see that light coming down. And when we started thinking about our site and a logo, right, that's the image I wanted to kind of go with, something a little bright. Right? So spent about 1.5 years kind of developing this thing, walk you through some of the features. You can, again, fill out a questionnaire. And after you're done filling in the blanks, the system will email you a hard copy of exactly what your funeral will look like. We call this the wish capture. Now, this is all about end-of-life wishes. So now you've got a PDF, you've got a document you can email around. You can send it to your children, you can send it to your loved ones, you can send it to a funeral director. This is what my funeral is going to look like. Right? I know for me, I want my children to have the opportunity to mourn and to grieve as they should. Right? There's also, well, I guess I'll walk through some of this, right? In thinking about, so as an entrepreneur, right, I kind of spend 1.5 years building this website. I think it's a great idea. I said, well, okay, now what do I do with it? It's done, right? Thought about kind of business to consumer, kind of rolling it out, social media campaigns, things like that, trying to convince the whole world that we need to rethink how we view death, dying, and funerals. I probably wouldn't live long enough to see this through. Right? I went to a show in Boston 2 weeks ago, and I met some HR people who looked at this and said, wow, this is really cool. I'd like to offer this to my employees. That's what brought me here. So thinking about, right, why would you want to partner with us, right? Deliver peace of mind to employees, right? Support caregivers, aging employees, and we can kind of get back to that. This is a low lift, high impact digital solution, and we can talk about a little more of that later. But let's get into more of the features, right? So we've got this will builder. Oh, I'm sorry, back up. We have this funeral planner. Then we have a will builder, right? You can go in, fill in the blanks, download a document, print it out. There you go. You have a will. Same with an advance directive. Now, I don't know if there's any attorneys in the room. If there are, I'm sorry, but attorneys have had us convinced for decades that a will is this incredible, it's a very complicated legal document, and you need their services, and you got to spend a couple $1,000s to do that, which is why a lot of people just shied away from it. Right? Well, now along comes trustandwill.com. Trustandwill.com says, you don't need an attorney. $300, we'll give you a will. Wow, right? Well, now AI comes around. They say, you don't even need to spend $300. We can do it for free, right? And again, right, the importance of a will and the importance of documenting all of these things, right? From an HR perspective, right, if you have employees and their spouse passes away and none of these arrangements have been made, right, you're talking about a lot of downtime, a lot of lost time, right? Those numbers are staggering. I mean, it's in the billions of dollars, right? So by offering something like this to an employee, it's going to benefit everybody. And as opposed to a lot of these transactional perks, right? What this lets your employees know is that you care, you're compassionate, you have a heart, right? They're more than just a number, more than just an employee, right? We're gonna guide you through life's most challenging situation, right? I mean, imagine you have, and maybe some of you have experienced this, you have an employee that comes into your office and they're just diagnosed with terminal cancer, and they tell you they got 3 months to live. I mean, how beautiful would it be to offer them something to help a little, right? We care, right? So within our site, we've got, again, the will builder, advanced directive. We ask you to assign a wish keeper. Think along the lines of an executor, right? So their key role, enter the date you pass away. Right? Now, they'll have limited access to your information while you're alive. Once they enter that date of passing, they have full access to help carry out all of your end-of-life wishes. Okay? You can create a notification of passing. You can personalize that however you'd like. Mine is something along the lines of, hey, you know, if you're getting this email, I've checked out, I'm going to throw a party in about 3 days. Stay tuned for the details, right? So once that date of passing gets entered, all your contacts, right? You will have uploaded all your contacts into your profile. All your contacts will get an email from you letting them know you passed away. So as I was testing the site, I had come in as my own wish keeper. I put in a date of passing. I immediately get a phone call from my daughter. What the hell are you doing? And I didn't even realize, they're like, oh my gosh, you got the email, right? So, well, at least I know it works. So again, upload contacts, create a notification of passing. You can write your own eulogy. You can write your own obituary. You can upload a video eulogy, right? Again, might leave this up to somebody else. So we have that. You can, eulogy, you can set up what we call final thoughts. So you can queue up emails and text messages to go out after you pass away. And you can go in by calendar date. Maybe you want to send email or birthday wishes to your children every year. You can set that up. Maybe you've been carrying a secret around your whole life. You want to kind of unload before you pass away. You can do that. If there's somebody you maybe need to get a last word in, probably no better way than this, right? And ultimately, and then you can upload videos. We sync with Spotify. You can create a playlist. So I've got a little playlist. They play these songs at my funeral. And I know like my 12-year-old, she saw my playlist. She said, Dad, you can't do that to me. She goes, they play that at your funeral, I'm gonna break down. I said, well, that's the point, right? And then ultimately, when you're done with all this, you will have created kind of an online legacy, right? That'll be out there now for future generations, right? Somebody wants to kind of come along and see, kind of who you were, right? A little more transactional than some of the sites that are out there. So, again, how this kind of benefits the employers. And listen, you got 10,000 people, right? They're turning 65 every day. 70% of Americans have no end-of-life plan. And I think we saw that by show of hands here, right? Employees want holistic, human-centered benefits, right? Most people, they don't leave jobs because of pay, right? I mean, this is proven, right? They leave jobs because they're not appreciated. They don't feel that the boss really cares, right? I'm involved in a couple of different businesses, and I've always advocated for my employees, right? I'm from New Jersey. I remember having conversations with some of my staff, talking to them about heat, right? Listen, October 1, your landlord's got to turn on the heat. If they don't, let me know. I'll give them a call, and we'll make sure that this happens. One of my employees came to me, and she said, I've got a list of items that are broken in my apartment, and the landlord just refuses to address this. I said, okay, well, give me his information. So I got the landlord's information. I called up the landlord. I said, my name is Paul Freed. I'm calling on behalf of Elizabeth Lacera. She's one of your tenants at 413 83rd Street, Union City, New Jersey. The guy said, are you an attorney? I said, no. Now, I had done a little bit of research and found out where this guy lives, and I said, no, I'm not an attorney. He said, well, then why should I talk to you? I said, well, because if you don't, Saturday morning, I'm going to have 30 people protesting outside your house on Fellswood Drive in Livingston, New Jersey, to let all your neighbors know that you're a slumlord. Right? Anyway, long story short, all of the repairs were made, and now I have an employee that will never leave my company. Right? And she's been vocal about it. She told one of my managers, she said, you know what, even if he fired me, I'd still show up. Right? So, again, thinking about what really matters to employees, right? When you start talking about cost of unplanned loss in the workplace, right? So bereavement leave, saying 3 days on an average, real recovery time, 20 to 30 work days, right? And these are real numbers, right? And again, when you think about the process, how many have been through it? How many have lost a loved one? How many have had to bury a parent, right? You know what that does to you, right? It's devastating. I've heard so many stories over the course of the last year and a half, and I've heard some stories today, right? There's a woman that I spoke with while I was in the kind of planning stage of all this, and she was telling me that her mom passed away, and her sister had their mother cremated because that's what they believed she wanted. Well, 2 months later, they were in the home getting everything in order, and they found a legal pad that clearly said Mom wanted to be buried. Right? They were devastated. Right? You talk about cost to U.S. employers, right? $75 to $100 billion in productivity lost annually, right, as a result of time off, right? It's a big number. Right, we look at, I made the arrangements and some of the benefits, and we've talked about some of these, right? But I believe that, look, this fills a gap in benefits when it comes to funeral planning, legacy, and just a little clarity, right? And the benefit to the family is tremendous, right? And how employees can benefit, right? You can take snapshots of this. I would welcome as many of you to come and visit me. I can walk you through the site and I can show you what this looks like. I've got an account set up, can kind of walk you through all this. It's pretty powerful. Oh, I think I missed something. And again, right, so, you know, my vision anyway in creating this is to try to, you know, make this taboo topic so not taboo anymore, right? Get people to talk about it. I mean, listen, we've heard this throughout our whole lives, right? You got a problem, talk it out, talk it out, talk it out. Me personally, I feared death and dying for most of my life. I would wake up in a cold sweat in the middle of the night just knowing that like one day it's all over, right? And I'm not going to be there to comfort my children anymore. And what I can tell you is kind of working through all of this and creating this website, it's put me at ease with my mortality. I mean, I still don't welcome it. I wish it wouldn't come around, but you know, it will. And I'm in a much better place to deal with it, and my family's in a much better place to deal with it, right? So, in thinking about, again, you know, the benefit to employees and employers, look, we all have, again, some of these other transactional benefits, right? I think at the end of the day, right, you know, employees, maybe they're not going to remember how much their bonus was or how many steps that wellness app tracked, right? But they'll remember the company and the employers that helped guide them through kind of life's most challenging situation. And it's hard to put a dollar value on that, right? I mean, employees want to feel valued, right? But in more than that kind of monetary sense. I've heard people speaking about that earlier. And I think it's very important. So we've got a QR code to take you right to the website. There are currently a couple of different levels of membership. There's a free membership that would give you access to the funeral planner, the will builder, the advanced directive builder. There's a ton of resources within the website. End-of-life doulas, you know, how they can help and assist when it comes to planning, funeral directors, attorneys, accountants, et cetera. But again, if anybody would love to just stop by and chat a little bit, that'd be wonderful. I'd love to kind of walk you through and show you kind of what this thing does. And of course, if there's anybody that's interested in talking about this for their employer or employees, you know, we're very open to discussing all types of options. And, you know, again, currently it's just me. Again, just a kind of an idea that popped into my head. Kind of give you just a little background. Kind of an habitual entrepreneur. So I've been involved in real estate development, construction. I've been in the restaurant business, food trucks, novelty gifts, residential cleaning, commercial cleaning. My father was a Holocaust survivor, and back in January of 2024, my cousin and I took a trip to Auschwitz. And my father survived with a brother and two sisters. So my father and my aunt were imprisoned in Auschwitz. So they were it was a ceremony for the 79th anniversary of the liberation of the camp. So I had never been there. My cousin and I went, and you know, we're kind of walking through, and probably the most horrific place on the planet. But aside from all of those kind of, you know, and not to bring the mood of the room down, but you know, you have the gas chambers and all of that, right? And that was horrific. But I walked through a building, and there's just a wall of portraits, right? Just pictures of faces, anonymous faces, right? They were just brought down to nothing more than a number, right? And they all had the same blank look on their face, and I couldn't help but think about what their legacy was, right? Who knows anything about any of these people, right? I mean, listen, there were 10 million people that were exterminated throughout this, and, you know, I started thinking about legacy, and look, you know, you think about even things like picture albums, right? Like, you know, photo albums. Photo albums are, you know, these were like family heirlooms that were passed down from generation to generation, right? They're a thing of the past now, right? A couple of generations from now, nobody's even gonna remember who we were, right? Maybe there'll be a photo laying around somewhere, but probably not. I mean, I have a photo of my great-grandmother that's sitting up on my dresser. My children don't even really know who she is, and after I'm gone, the photo will probably be gone. That'll be the end of her, right? So thinking about that legacy and an online legacy and kind of having something like that out there forever, right? Like maybe one day my great-great-grandchildren will want to know, who was this crazy guy? And they can look me up and they can find out a little bit about me. And there I am kind of, you know, speaking to them through video, right? Pretty cool. But that's kind of how I came to this. And I think I'm going to wrap it up. So I want to thank everybody for their time. I really appreciate it.